Hey Akshat, welcome to the All Walks of Life podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much. And I think in all the retakes, you lost that smile of yours.
I have, yeah. I get that quite a bit apparently.
Yeah.
But hey, yeah, that's really nice. So we were just having a conversation as to the kind of things that you are involved in.
Right.
Just for the benefit of the viewers, can you sort of share what sort of keeps you busy and what floats your boat?
So by education, I did my mechanical engineering. I did my BTech, followed by my MTech, and I did a year of PhD as well. And then, kind of I stopped, started working. I had my own, consultancy. And this was all happening in Russia. And I came back to India in 2000. And since then, it's been a strange roller coaster ride where I've dabbled in a lot of different things. I had my own HR consulting firm, which was the last corporate thing that I did. Although that's not true now, because I've joined Delhi Street Art as the CEO, so I'm back to the corporate
There you
gig
go.
as well.
Yeah.
So for the longest time, I got into art and I stuck with it initially as an artist myself, and then I got into curation, organizing festivals and stuff. Yeah, and then since last year, I've joined Delhi Street Art
Yeah.
as the CEO.
So we were just talking about the many retakes that we have taken.
Yeah.
And in some of the retakes, we were sort of talking about this whole aspect that so traditionally, or how we sort of look at the sort of gender landscape of things in the world we live in, that if someone sort of specializes, if someone sort of learned a particular trait for a certain number of years, if he's gone to school for that or something of that sort, individuals and even perhaps the person himself starts associating himself or herself to that particular industry or to that particular line of work. So what was it that sort of drew you towards the arts? Was that always an affinity that you had, or also primarily more on this whole specialization thing? That did you sort of have a wide variety of interests when you went into college, and you know that maybe you'd want to drift
There
away?
are many questions in that, and
Yeah.
they're long answers. I'll try and kind
Yeah.
of
Categorize
bring
it.
them up, one by one, and kind of in a chronological kind of way, connecting it with what I have experienced. Because
sure.
I don't think there's any set pattern that humans need to follow.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the problems with which I see around myself, that people trying to follow a pattern, which has, supposedly different societies have different patterns that they follow. And so I also followed, you're born and then you follow up with your education. You have higher education, and then the higher education prepares you for a job. That's primarily what it does. And then you get into the job, and the job has levels that you cross, and probably if you want to take a jump, you move into industry. And there's no change. I mean, what all you do is a different kind of job, different role that you perform, but you just keep pursuing that pattern that has been set for you. So the path is already there, which you assume that is already there.
Mhm.
Also over a period of time, it's inbuilt into your genetics, that you start believing that that's how life is to be lived. And but thankfully, I think being a 90s kid, and I mean I was kid in the 80s, and then in the 90s was when I think a lot of Indians at least broke away from this norm, and all the RJs and the DJs, and everything started coming as a possibility, not just to generate revenue for yourself, or an income for yourself, but also as a passion to be explored, and not just explored just on the surface of it, but really artistically grow into it. So with all these things, and I did my BTech and my MTech, I went for a scholarship, and I did 1 year of PhD as well. And then I dropped out because I was already heading a representative office of a Dubai-based company there in Moscow. That is, I was still following what I had got into. I didn't become an engineer because I didn't know if I wanted to be or not. But I got this brilliant opportunity to travel abroad and explore things. I think that opened a lot of life for me, life-changing things. I came back to India in 2000 and started to look for something, and it was very bleak because as an engineer, I was getting just too low an amount as a salary. I just didn't want to go into it. So I started my own businesses. Then till 2006, I had a consulting firm, an HR consulting firm, and which was quite exciting because we used to be headhunting for the top levels and all. And there was a partner of mine, and just one day the money was good,
Mhm.
and kind of exciting also. You calling up Dubai, you calling up Singapore, hiring people for some of the clients. I don't want to name them, but yes, we did their topmost hirings as well. So it was exciting to get these. Headhunting is an interesting
Mhm.
thing. But then I just lost. I mean, I thought, is this the end of it? You know, I mean, I'll just keep having newer clients and I'll have newer, things, and that's the end of it. So I actually quit. I asked my partner to buy me out, and that was the end of that story,
Oh,
at least.
wow.
So for a year and a half, I didn't do anything. Sort of exploring. I didn't do much. I just sat home and watched TV and everything. And then I started writing first. And then, kind of wrote short stories. Then I started writing a novel, which I completed about 250 pages, which is still 1/3 of that. And that's the end of that chapter also,
Why not?
unfortunately.
Aren't we getting a War and Peace from Akshat?
I know. I don't know. I mean, and it was a fiction, and I
Yeah.
like writing fiction. I'm not really a non-fiction person. I read a lot of fiction as well, so that's what I churn out also. But then I found an old canvas lying around. So must have been from my childhood, because my mother, as I was telling you that, she's the one with the skills and the passion, and unfortunately, having been born in an Orthodox Indian family, she could not really explore her talent. I mean, she was a very good sportsman, state level and all, but she could never travel out of. She was a very good singer, she was a very good dancer, and she was a very good artist. She did her distance learning from JJ and, followed it up with that. She used me and my sister as a conduit for, sort of exploring what she could not explore herself. She would take us for gymnastics. I and my sister were Delhi number 1 and 2
Oh, wow.
in gymnastics. I mean, that's still school. I did participate in the Shankars and I got one of the prizes long back and all. But then education, I remember I went for a gymnastics tournament. I won the second, the prize
Mhm.
for the state. I came back, I was awarded, and I was given a 0 in the test that had happened on that day when I was out. So so education took over and I had to leave that. So in all of this, I found this canvas lying around and some colors which had, I don't know how, miraculously just survived, because they generally dry up and they're not usable. I just started applying, didn't really make anything great. And but I liked the process. I just liked the process of putting paint on canvas. I then searched for an institute. I thought maybe I'll just go back to Russia because Russia was famous for art and all that. And 7 years of, I thought that's too long. Then I looked at College of Art and other options, and then I realized I didn't need a degree, because those 4 years are, I don't want to again get stuck. I just wanted to get the basics and the techniques right, so that then I could just go on and explore. And I did my course from Delhi College of Art, and 2008-9 we had a final exhibition, students exhibition, and then followed by 3 group shows with some friends of mine, then some more curated shows and all. And I realized that a lot of people don't understand that there is more to art than just creating art.
Okay. Yeah.
So because you create art, and again there is a life cycle.
There's a whole
to it.
industry.
There's a whole industry. So how do you engage with the industry also? How do you become a part of that industry, and how do you take it forward from that? So on all steps that I've taken, and so I have explored a lot of different things, be it comics, street art, and Delhi street art. I actually volunteered with them from the second event that they did in 2013 of painting the dustbins at the Lodi Garden. So from that time, I have been a volunteer, just coming in and going whenever I had that time.
Yeah.
And similarly for other things. So I was a part of the first Comic Con. We released a comic, and then we had groups, a lot of these collectives, and they were very fluid collectives. So within the collectives, we different people would come together, and all that did for me was expose me to a lot of different things. And I realized that I just didn't want to be stuck with any one single thing. So I don't want to be called an artist. I don't want to be called a curator. I don't want to be called a single person. I'm a human being exploring everything that I can.
Yeah.
Be it science also. So and languages. So I speak, read, and write Russian, obviously, English and Hindi. I tried learning Japanese for 2.5 years, but then I was working, so it was not happening. And I wanted to learn the language because I wanted to read the manga, and
Yeah. Why not?
I wanted to look at anime without the subtitles and all. I just wanted to enjoy it as it is. Urdu script writing from Rikta and from different places. So I want to kind of put everything into my basket.
Yeah, fair enough. Why do you think it is difficult for individuals though? Because there are some people, and as you were saying, you were in the same spot, you were doing well for yourself, you were in the corporate space.
Right.
But some people, even if they might have an inkling that they sort of want to do something else, they can't, because they sort of, maybe it's because they're too attached, maybe they have too many maybe there's just too many things on them, or perhaps sometimes some individuals don't think like that. No, I don't know. Maybe it's perhaps because of the socialization that they might have, that the friends that they hang out with, or the kind of stuff that they're reading or engaging with.
So I think it's a bit of everything.
Everything, right?
Because one of the main problems is peer pressure.
Mhm.
You kind of get into it. So one thing is you don't realize that there is an opportunity. That's one part. The second part is you are afraid to, even when an opportunity comes knocking, because you don't know if you'll succeed or fail. And success is the only thing that counts. Supposedly, I don't think it matters.
Mhm.
Success is also a measurement, right? It's not a pass and fail thing. So
Yeah.
you take away learnings from a failure, and that might come. So it's a success too. So that's another problem. Peer pressure is a problem. The other one more problem that I feel is that we've started to look at our own identities as reflections of what people tell us. Rather than trying to explore who we are, we try and just engage with people, and their reactions, their acknowledgement of our success
Mhm.
is what is important to us. So I think that somewhere needs to change. And this whole thing, like I walked in and I asked you, should I tie up my hair
Like,
or should I just
do whatever
because I
you mind,
just
yeah?
don't know how I look. I actually don't look at the mirror a lot of times.
Right. This is kind of awkward for you then.
No, that's okay. So I'm again not looking at I look at I know
Yeah.
generally how I look, but I'll tell you, there are days when I look, I pass by a mirror or just look at myself and I'm like, shit, okay, this is how I look right now. Because it's not important for me anymore.
Mhm.
I have this assumption of myself. This is generally what I look like, and this is what I live with. So
Mhm.
I know I'm dressing up. I know
Yeah.
that I'm planning for certain things, but I don't necessarily look at how I'm looking, what I'm planning for, what is happening. I just move into the things. Yeah, I know that certain attire is required
Yeah.
for a certain space. I'll probably just wear it and then just go. I don't press my shirts. I don't think it's important for
Yeah.
me. It might be important for a lot of the other people. I still wear the same suit which I got made for my marriage 20 years back.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
I mean,
Fits you fine.
I still fit into it. That's a big thing. But I just don't need them as often. So why do I need to just waste my time and my energy in just trying to acquire these things? But
You
I
think
must
it's
have
sort of-
gone through 20 jeans in a year
Okay.
because I just use them as rough as
More often.
possible.
Fair
Yeah,
enough.
that's what I wear
Yeah.
all the time.
So you think it sort of leads more into the whole aspect of confirmation bias, that obviously there's like the whole aspect of society that's telling you one thing about maybe your profession, where you live, who you
Right.
sort of work with, and all that kind of stuff, but also yourself, because the more you sort of look into the mirror, or
Mhm.
the more you sort of engage with people that you might perhaps not be interested in hanging out with, but you do it nonetheless, it sort of consolidates your own aspect, because what is
True.
true for you then, right? Like,
So truth is always relative.
Yeah.
Is what I mean. Facts are never facts, really. I know we live in an era of fake news
Yeah.
or whatever, but facts are always a perspective. They are always a viewpoint. So this vantage point, where does it lie?
Hmm.
The same incident is seen differently by different people, right? Because they've got not just their different vantage points, but they're coming with a different understanding of life altogether. They've lived a life, and this is what they see. So in an accident, people will respond differently to whatever that accident is happening. Some will try to help, some will just watch, some will have their mobiles on.
Mhm.
So it's always going to be different about the same incident or the fact that is there.
Yeah.
So when this information overload is anyways there, and we are just gigabytes by gigabytes, that's what we consume. We are consuming every single moment. What do we retain? Right? At the end of the day, everything that we are creating, as a creator, as an artist, whatever I do, nothing is really original, because there is something subconsciously which has seeped in. It could be very in your face kind of a thing, which I deliberately can include, but there's so many things which just get retained in the mind, and the mind plays this game that that I come up with this original. Nothing really is
It's
original.
not yours, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I was recently having this conversation with Kavya Sharma, and she's a poet and a writer herself. And I sort of mentioned this line. I sort of picked it up from Javed Akhtar. So I was watching an interview of his, and he was like, so he was asked, ki, how do you write great poetry, or like how do you get better at it, and things of this sort. And he's like, to have the audacity to write one line of poetry, you have to like consume 100. So what he's sort of meaning by that is ki, everyone. So there's another sort of quote that goes around ki, if you want to write great poetry, you have to risk being cringe. And I think that is true in many aspects, not simply poetry, but in many of the artistic
Some excel
endeavors.
in being cringy.
Yeah. It's about the fine balance. Ki, matlab, you have to sort of walk that balance.
I think it's about exploration. I think all these people, when Javed Akhtar ji is talking about that, you need to read poetry. That's absolutely true, because the meter might or might not matter. But if you're getting into free verse, do you really understand what free verse is? How does it work? Is there still a symphony? Is there still a narrative to it? How do you do that?
Yeah.
And generally, it can happen by just reading. It can give you, brilliant examples of, wow, this is something great. But at the same time, you can come across something and like, this is definitely not what I am doing. And this knowledge of your likes and dislikes kind of, also defines who you are.
For sure.
As long as you're conscious about what you're doing. So you read, so I read, off late, not as much, but I love reading and books, and they can be all sorts. As long as they're not self-help books, I read every single thing. So fiction, non-fiction, biographies, every single thing. And, science fiction and all is brilliant. I just love it because that canvas is so huge.
It opens your sort of perspective as to how things can be, right? Because we sort of we have our own presuppositions of how things are. It's nice to sort of have these conversations or sort of go to different places to sort of open your mind and see that you might be sort of stuck in your sort of echo chambers and
we're always in our echo chambers. Absolutely. Because I have realized this repeatedly, that whenever I start feeling that, I know something, I come to know that I don't know much. Because there's somebody always doing it differently, or, things can be done.
That's the Socratic method in you already. You see, there you go.
I don't know. I've read about everything and a lot of philosophy as well. But it's good to read. Going back to what you were saying about Javed Akhtar, reading and, learning, and it's also about doing. So you should read a lot, you should do a lot. There will be crap and there will be stuff that will come from that crap which will be really gold. And that assessment not necessarily needs to come from the publishers if they're, if it's about poetry or from your readers. It has to come from within. If you're not able to discern if something is good or bad, I think you are not connected with your own creation. And that's important. So everybody who creates knows at a certain level that, wow, this is great, or shit, this is not good enough. So kind of an inner assessment of what you've created is important.
It's always helpful. Yeah.
It is.
I think this is a very interesting concept I came across very recently. I don't know if I entirely agree with it or not. So there's this podcast I really admire. His name is Amit Verma. He's a journalist and writer, among other things. So he says that, and he's been doing his show for a while now, and he says that one way he thinks he's gotten better at it is the conversations is simply by having a lot. So he means that generally people do quality over quantity, which in some sense does work for the vast majority of things. But he does believe that quantity in some sense can lead towards quality, because the more
as long as you're conscious about it, as long as you're critical of your own self and trying to analyze, and you're working towards making it better, trying to learn from it, then definitely you will. A lot of people don't
that's
get
what
better.
I say. Because you can still be not producing the best kind of stuff, but still be caught up with the algorithm saying that, these are the certain number of things that are coming your way. But I don't know. I do think though that if you are involved in a particular skill, even if it's conversation, writing poetry, painting, whatever it may be, the more you sort of engage with it, the better, or maybe the more nuanced your understanding about that particular subject area does become. And I may be wrong, but
No, I think you're right. But I also want to point out how, like you're talking about, your skill. What is a skill? Skill is a technique and your ability to do something, right? A skill can be acquired. But can talent really be acquired? It can be. But because, that's the repetition model. You repeat things. So I kind of agree with that. But I think that in that repetition, if there is no consciousness involved, if you're not really into it, trying to understand why it went right, what went wrong, what can be done better, what are the others thinking about, what do I think about what they're thinking. So all these, there has to be a constant conversation with your inner self. When I say inner self is always woke and looking at what is happening around you. So it's not just a flow. You look at a film, right? You watch the film, you just get, just flow along with it. It ends. But you always have certain things that stay with you, certain things that don't. Some certain things consciously, certain things subconsciously. So you to be able to alert yourself towards subconscious triggers. I think that's an interesting. I'm not a saint, and I'm
Yeah,
not about that. I'm not talking about that kind of awakening, but I still feel that as humans, we have a certain time that is given to us, which we have absolutely no control over. We just don't know anything. So might as well try and enjoy whatever you're doing. And while you are enjoying it, try to plan for the future, which you have no control over.
Yeah,
But you still plan, because if you don't plan, there's nothing to look forward to.
for sure.
So those things are there. I just wanted to make a point, and I just
No,
forgot,
my
but
only
that's okay.
thing, my only thing with the quantity leading to quality in some sense was if one is sort of engaging with that particular endeavor for such a long period of time,
Right.
that would mean, maybe I'm wrong, that would mean that perhaps that there is some sort of interest that they do have in that particular area. And if they do have interest, maybe they would sort of read widely in that particular landscape of how, I don't know, how things can be better or what they can do to sort of improve their craft, improve their art. That's what I think about
You
it.
can
but-
improve your craft. That's exactly the point. You can improve the craft, but can you build the content? That content, where is that going to come from?
Yeah.
And that can come from whatever you are experiencing repeatedly when you're doing it again and again. And that workhorse thing works brilliantly, because your skill will definitely get better.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it, as long as you're, again, you're working towards it.
Right.
And you're learning how to do it better. But how do you start realizing that this is me? This is that quotient that makes me different from whoever else is there. So you are a podcaster and you're talking about Amit Verma. So Amit will have a different style of working at
For
things.
sure, yeah.
You will also have a different one. And it has to change. I think it has to always evolve. Otherwise, you start repeating yourself. Once that realization comes, that, this is, I really used to love Nilesh Mishra's,
Slow interviews.
slow interviews, and actually much before that, when he used to be on
Radio.
reading out stories and all. Now, when I listen to him on the radio, I switch off, because it's almost as if he's parodying himself. That deliberate slowness, that deliberation is overpowering for me. And this is just me, and it's unfortunate. I've seen him up close, and really, I was really a big fan. Still am of all the work that he's done before. I'm not really enthused by what he does right now. But again, that's me trying to learn more about myself, what I like or don't like.
For sure, yeah.
It's not about him as much. It's about me. And probably it's a very selfish thing to say.
Don't you think maybe it can also be the case that at that particular period in your life, you were perhaps you're more interested in that kind of like conversations? Or
one thing could be novelty. No, I still love listening to people and everything. But the way he used to present the story, it seemed natural. Now it does not seem natural. It seems contrived.
Right.
And that is where, I've started to step away from it.
Yeah.
And I'm not enjoying it anymore. But
Fair enough.
the stories are good. Stories are still good. There's stories, some of the stories are actually much better, because he's really going out to find those stories, get others to, write. And so, yeah, he's making an effort. Absolutely. And I can see that, and I appreciate that part. But what the end product is something that I have not been able to, live with as easily as I used to before. So it could have been the novelty factor also, because it happened for the first time. Although I remember when I was very young, we used to have this person who used to come on radio and read out stories. And that was brilliant. I remember I used to be mesmerized, because TV was still just 2 channels. Actually, 1 channel.
Right.
Doordarshan. And then we had the DD, DD2 that came after that. Yeah, I'm really old. No, but it's exciting that I've seen everything kind of change. We've seen the VJs come on. I have seen MTV come alive and all. And that access never used to be there. And the time that we used to spend in the air. So I can kind of see where, the oldies come from, and they say, that the generation now has no time for anything. They just don't go out. I love to play outside.
Yeah.
I still play cricket every Sunday.
Oh, wow. Where do you play?
So we play normal red ball, leather ball cricket and everything. I play for a club for the last 14 years. This is the 14th season that we are playing.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway, sorry to cut you off. Yeah.
No. So my point being that I really would like to go out still. And it is probably because I used to be just out of my house all the time. Unless and there was no mobile, right? They couldn't call me back inside. They had to call up a lot of my friends just to check which house am I in? Am I in any house at all? Or they would start searching for me and probably scold me, and I'd get a nice beating as well in the evenings. But that whole point of, just going out and doing things, those exploration, that has changed. This entire, I'm accessible. But that accessible has also taken away my freedom and my privacy. But it's good to know, in challenging situations, it is good to know, probably.
But don't you think that's with the way the media space and with the way people are interacting, just spending a large proportion of their times online or on the social media platforms will also create a different kind of art that will come out, so that the artists that do start creating, who are sort of younger now and things of that sort, there'll be a different perspective of how they sort of look at art. So I was referencing my conversation with Ansh, and he does a lot of interesting work when it comes to the AI and generative art kind of space. And maybe that's the future, and maybe that would be the space where people would want to navigate on. That sure, like these
future, I believe, is transient.
Okay,
it passes, becomes today and past, right? So always remember that it's going to keep changing. So I'm absolutely never going to be averse of any change or any modernization in terms of technology taking over certain things. Am I really enthused about AI? Not really. I mean, it's as long as it's an end to a means to a tool, it's fine. But once I am thinking about it doing the work, that's okay. A lot of work around us is anyways done by machine learning and through AI and all. But is that supposed to be the end of it? Right? I really respect the people who've done the coding, who've done the background, which allows a computer to start, kind of to be a brain on its own, learn certain things and do things repeatedly much better than what a human would do. But the human failure, in certain senses, our mistakes are also beautiful. I actually feel that which is perfect is never that beautiful for me. Some things, when they are a little crooked, is what makes them better, because that they seem to be original. So
there's perfection in the imperfections.
So again, if you go back to the industrial revolution where you have the machines coming in and taking over the jobs and everything, imagine a potter and a machine, right? They're two different people. So the potter making that, they also do, they repeatedly make the same thing, but it's never the same thing. There's always going to be a micron of difference in the shape that will come out. But in a machine's case, no, it's going to be the same, as long as there is no issue in the right. The coding or the whatever.
It's very mechanized. It's
very mechanized. It's going to be just repeating itself, which is fine, but it's fine for a consumer society.
Right.
We are consuming so much, then it's fine. But then when you're talking about so many people generating so many things, and then they will learn, and then there's more to come in the future. The challenge is there's so much of it. How do I consume everything?
For sure.
And so what happens is the attention span keeps going down. So I give a video, so reels are like 15 seconds, and even I don't last 15 seconds with them. so the whole point is this attention span, and we're talking of a long format interview right now. I don't know how many people would have switched off 10 minutes
long
back.
Yeah.
Long back. The first 15 seconds, and then, they'll say, oh man, here's another guy, just telling us what to do. No, but the point of how do you keep it sane? There's just too much data. Even for myself, if I want to listen to, things, I want to do a lot of things, where is the time to do everything? But then I think exploration is important, and out of all of this, that gigabyte, terabyte, and whatever that we are creating for ourselves, I have created so many folders of my photographs, my old, and all my material that I have. And I have photographs which I had scanned. These photographs are from 1970 when I was born, 73 I was born. So they are photographs of others who have taken of me. And I still had the scans. So the photographs are ephemeral, yeah. They disappear and they crumble, and it's paper and just fades away and everything. But I can lose it in the digital world also.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's a possibility to have retained it, Google Photos, whatever, cloud.
On the clouds and
hard disk, CD, whatever, pen drives and everywhere that I've kept it. But there are times when I just find an old photograph folder. It could be a digital one or a hard copy. And I start going into that. So what I'm experiencing at that moment is much better than anything that I'm going to do with that material otherwise. Because that's a very personal engagement. I could actually come up with a lot of things from that and then replicate it in my stories, what I do, in my work, what I do, in my conversations that I have with people. So I think these they become the physical repositories of our memories. They are actually
Yeah.
evidence of that. But there's so many memories which are just there and not there. Like
Right.
sense of smell. So there can be a smell, roti, that chapati being made. There can be times when it can trigger a memory of, decades back, or, when you were a child and you walked in. And then from that trigger, you move on to the next memory and to the next memory, and it becomes a chain. And by the end of it, you just don't understand where did this come from. Right. But those are those unknown memories, and they're beautiful. I mean, I can go past a bakery and suddenly, it can change. I could be transported to Moscow and wherever I used to be, and we used to have these bakeries. We used to buy direct, fresh loaf of bread from there. So that entire smell. I mean, so I think smell is one thing that we've not really been able to capture in whatever we create.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, what I was saying, that how do you keep these physical memories? I mean, which evidence memories and these unknown memories, unknown triggers for memories, how do you keep them alive? I think that's a very interesting thing for the future, is what I would want.
This is very interesting because I don't know if you sort of come across film photography. So now there's sort of more of a movement that's sort of going towards that. Many of the professional photographers are starting to shoot film again. And I don't know, I've sort of dabbled around with it, and maybe it's perhaps the scarcity element of things, that, for example, because you only have a certain number of shots that you can take on a reel, so you sort of prize those pictures much more. Or maybe when the photos do come out, it's a little rawer than perhaps it does come out on the digital format. So maybe I'm just being a romantic or whatever, but it does sort of lead to having a much different experience as compared
I'm very
to
old
digital.
school in that. I love the roll cameras.
Yeah.
I still have a couple lying around. They're not in the best shape, and I'm using my mobile because that's become the
It's
easiest
convenient.
thing. It's convenient.
Yeah.
I mean, because I know why I'm taking photographs. I'm taking that specific format for the Instagram.
Yeah.
Right. So I have planned for it. So all that and from my mobile is just perfect because it just uploads directly from there. But there is no replacement for film. And especially if you are a photographer who processes their own film and makes positives out of them and the prints subsequently from
And
that.
also that whole process of
That entire
the whole
thing.
chemical process.
Chemical process. And while that chemical process, and there's a lot of editing that can be done during that period as well, which we don't do as much. I mean, regularly people just don't do that. I know Museo Camera and other places are actually doing a brilliant job of trying to get back people to understand what are these different techniques of, getting print. Photography is a print. It's a reflection of something. It's the negative, positive, But what happens with these film, and you spoke about how there is a specific number of shots that you can get. And you've taken a shot, and you in a digital mode, you can just see how it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if you want to be selective about clicking, you can take the photograph, immediately check. But that's not the case. I've had an incident where I forgot to load the camera.
Oh, wow.
And I took all the photographs and there was nothing. It was a trip and nothing came out of it. So though there'll be these challenges, which probably wouldn't have happened had I had a mobile or a digital camera. Yeah, that can happen probably if you're,
if you're shooting on
if your SD card,
Oh, right.
Yeah, it corrupts or something, something. But you will still have some memory of that, So that's happened. Also, when you are processing that and, you create that, there's a sense of actual creation. It's like giving birth to something. From a digital perspective, we have brilliant options available now with all the filters, and although I'm not gung-ho about all of them, but I try to keep it auto simply because it's just easy. You take what you like. I am not a photographer, but I like to frame things. That's all that I'm doing. So when I'm looking, I know that there is a play of light and shadow. There is a sense. So a lot of blurred photographs look beautiful to me because there's a perspective and it's triggering me to think about something from my life, right? And so anything can work and everything might just not be good enough. But when you look at that, so that original question about that restriction, that limit that I have in front of me, it does, I think, kind of push me to be a little selective of what I do. And it also, kind of calms you down. There can be panic as well,
Yeah.
'cause I'm not left with enough. But it calms you down because you've got to be calm. I mean, beyond a point, once you've been practicing it, you'll realize that you have to be better. You have to be calmer to be able to get a better shot. And
That's
you've got
very
to
true.
plan your shot. You've got to really work at it. And that's where the work ethic can come in. And that's where the workhorses can do really well.
Mhm.
It's about, so when you do repeatedly, but with focus, I think there's a better chance of doing something really successful out of that.
I've been having a really interesting conversation, but we've been so far in, but I still haven't asked you how you sort of, because you are in the art space
Right.
and you are an art curator, I'd be really interested to know how you sort of look at this sort of environment. I think we've briefly touched about it, but is there a particular way you look
No,
at
no,
art?
I think one major issue, and that's something that I've struggled with when I got into art and when I started to understand how people consume art.
Right.
People don't really consume art. I mean, as long as it's a film where the investment is very limited, personal investment, I'm talking about the money.
Mhm.
Money is also low. You can go to a art gallery for free. You can just walk in, look at the works. I mean, I know there can be people around and, you might feel intimidated by them. Most people don't realize that it's a free option, that you can just walk in, look at the art and walk out. And that experience can remain with you. You don't need to buy anything. You don't even need to have small talk. You don't need to talk or ask for the price, at least show as if you're a customer or a buyer. You don't need to. This whole consumption, of art is so very important. And I'm surprised at how, coming from this subcontinent where art has always been a part of our lives.
Exactly.
Be it rangoli, be it the wall painting, be it any single thing, even the way you put out the food, how it is laid out in a thali. There's a pattern to
Yeah.
it. There's a traditional pattern to it, and people will play around with that. There'll be bouquets, there'll be flower decoration, there'll be how you plan your house and everything. Once that has been a part of your life, how do we just move away from this? Why does it have to be a big name which has been, spoken about multiple times on the social media, in the newspaper, somebody's really going gaga over it, and that's the reason why you go it. No, you're going for the celebrity status. You're not going for the art. Art should be a very personal thing. You just go, I mean, you spend 10 minutes, you spend an hour, you spend 10 seconds. It's up to you, but it's about you trying to consume and see how you find it. Do you like it? You don't like it.
Yeah.
Even in abstract art, so, a lot of figurative art, people can understand that there's a human figure, there's a horse, there's whatever, something that they can associate with. But in an abstract, it's purely a response to the colors, the shapes, the textures, whatever is there, the scale of it. Installations, people don't understand what's happening. You don't have to understand art. You just don't need to. You don't even need to ask. Yeah, I mean, it can help at times to understand what the artist was planning for it. Because an artwork will have its two life cycles, actually one and multiple. One life cycle is when the artist is creating it. And that the moment the artist decides, okay, now it's done, that's the end of one life cycle. The other life cycle is going to be every time a viewer stands in front of it and has their personal conversation with it. It could be good, bad, whatever. It will be multiple and it will be always different. Similar at times, but always different. Because that person, that individual who walked in and is looking at it, is coming, he's just parked his car or probably just got off the metro, had a fight with someone or just had a kiss by his love or whatever. I mean, I don't know what that person is carrying as a baggage.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they come in and they look at something and then they will, again, because of their past memories, they'll try and connect with something. Their association with colors, with objects, shapes, it will happen on a very individual level. So it's always going to be different and it's so beautiful. But people don't want to just engage.
Why do you think that is though? Because so I was hearing this conversation of yours with Ranjan, and this is a particular interest of yours as well, with especially Art Amor, like the blog that you guys do have, where you want to sort of rekindle this whole aspect of people actually engaging with. And Ranjan in that particular interview said the visual arts is what he thinks is struggling the most in India.
It does. It takes a lot to be able to understand what's happening there. I mean, there's a song. It could be in Turkish, it could be in Russian, it could be in, whatever language or without language instrumental. And you would still know if you like it or you don't like it, right? Because it's easy to consume. It's happening around you. You don't necessarily always need to go somewhere for it to happen. But it could be a ringtone, it could be anything. So we have visual art, but a lot of it, the visual art that is consumed is actually advertising. There's visual art every single place around us.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
There is, I mean, that phone box, every single thing has a graphic design.
Yeah.
Somebody behind that who's actually created for it. The color coding, the shape of it, the lines and everything has been planned.
The text, the images
Every
of the
single. So
leaders,
text
yeah.
is also symbol,
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
It just has a certain meaning which has been accepted up for, right? So in different fonts and different scripts and all, you've kind of decided what you're going to read it as. It could read differently. I mean, a table is a table, right? Jerome ki Jerome. I mean, so that's a brilliant poem, and I love that, because that entire thing about trying to change something. But that text is also a symbol. The text, when it's put on the box, there is a composition that it is, there. How much, what color is used, how thick is it, how thin is it. That text can actually, it could show that it's a creepy or it's a horror film, or, what kind of a
Whatever,
font has been used.
Yeah.
Whatever emotion you want to express, and convey, or message you want to convey, it can be done through the text itself. It could say green in words, in alphabets, but it could be painted in yellow.
Okay.
It can play with your mind as well. But so it is also a visual, composition part. But once you've done consuming all this, it becomes very difficult to try and understand what's happening, because this is easy to consume. It works on a very subconscious level, and there are pundits who are sitting there trying to understand, and they have really mastered that art, and it's brilliant. All kinds of strange things just pick up and they become viral and they happen. Just the Pepsi colors will just go viral, and Thumbs Up will have a different thing, and Coke will have a different thing. They have really mastered it, and these people are really good at what they do. Brilliant. But the problem is that when people try and engage with the visual art that's there as the fine art, and in galleries and everything, it becomes very difficult for them, because it's not easy to understand. Why is the person doing this? Why is, say, Chitto Prasad making a woodcut or whatever about the Bengal famine? Does it make any relevance to me right now? But if you don't engage with it, you just won't get what's happening. That engagement has to be there.
But Aakshat,
so stepping, I'm just trying to put three things here. So stepping in to watch is a big challenge, because most people feel that they can't enter, or they don't want to enter, or they will not understand what's
some of them are
there.
actually also scared. So
that's what I'm saying. They're scared to enter.
Yeah.
So how did this fear, where did this come from? I think it comes from the gallery systems, and I'm not taking away from them. They do a brilliant job. They represent artists. They are very important there for the entire ecosystem. But the ecosystem is surviving. The artist and the art is not necessarily surviving. It's important to sell. So the commercial aspect is important. But over a period of time, what most of the galleries have been involved in is promoting just the artists that they have on there, on board. So it takes away from the others. And I'm not saying no gallery can, kind of represent everyone. Why have the artists not taken to themselves to go out there and market themselves? Why don't they speak for themselves? Most of the artists that we have on Art or More, and we have interviews and reviews and all, most of them don't want to speak about their art. Most of them don't even know about their own art, which is again a very strange thing. But it's very important for us to know how an individual knows very small things about themselves, and then it is the art curators and the art writers and the critics who are putting those large words and and all the meaning into their art, which never needed to be said. A lot of art is just done plainly because the person felt like doing it. But you put in the large words, and you put in. So when Art Amore was started, it was started with this concept in mind that we'll keep it at least in a language which is easy to consume. Because we've as an art fraternity, we've actually scared away most of the people. They walk in, they read text which just bowls them over. They don't know what's happening here.
Yeah, it's like all jargon. It's all like about the what's it called?
The Anthropocene. I mean, who's interested in that? Yeah, I mean, academics, absolutely. Let's have an academic text also. People who are initiated into it, people with philosophical bent of mind. But not everybody will walk in with that. And I'm not saying that dumb it down. It's not about dumbing down. It's about making it accessible. The problem is art today is not accessible. As a medium, so why, if I have my $300 or my $500, why would I want to take a taxi or a car and go to an exhibition and check that out, when I can just sit home, switch on my app and watch a I don't know, Salman Khan movie or something, because it's entertaining. It doesn't matter. Or I'll just go out and have some bhelpuri and everything. That's kind of good time for with my friends or with my family and whatever. Why would I waste that money? Because it would seem like a waste.
Mhm.
So when we were young, I remember we used to be taken to museums and different places. It's an interesting thing. And I now look at that same activity in a different way. I look at the teachers, how they behave, what do they do. And it is tough. Children are not easy. And I remember I would not have been easy also. I mean, none of my batchmates would have been easy. And they can be really pains. They just, because they want to defy,
Yeah.
they'll just not allow. But how do you get them to be, these teachers, where are those really brilliant teachers which can excite you about something?
That's what I'm saying. I think it's about the curiosity, and
Yeah.
if that aspect of interest sparks through, if it's a teacher who's taking like a school trip towards
Right.
a art gallery,
Right.
and if you can see it from the teacher's eyes that even they are not just there because they have to do a job,
Yeah.
but they're actually interested about the art, they actually care like what's on the walls and those kind of things, then I think that does sort of seep through to the children. That'll be, oh, ma'am saying something interesting, maybe I should think about this, or maybe I should go and look about that. I think perhaps it's that.
It's not easy. But I
That's
think
true.
that, the most difficult job, I think, is teaching. Because it's not just knowing, it's actually dispensing that knowledge, giving it, passing it on to the person, and keeping them excited enough about it to actually remember it. And I remember a lot of my teachers, and I have kind of, wondered what was it about them that actually stuck with me. Why did I like this teacher? Did I like the subject, or did I like the way they taught?
They taught, yeah.
Because that's also interesting. But I think, and it's unfortunate, I think it must be happening across the world. At least in India, I've seen that teaching as a profession is picked up because it's supposedly easy,
Right.
and it's a 9 to whatever that time
Yeah.
you spend there and you come back.
Come back home.
That's not how teaching happens.
Mhm.
Teaching, I think, is a very loaded thing. You actually pass on something, and the children with, and especially the younger children, they have very impressionable minds. So when you pass on something, and you pass on something wrong, or you pass on your anger, you pass on your hatred about certain things, all this
Your biases,
the biases
whatever,
and
yeah.
everything, it is passed on because you believe in that person. If you have that persona and that child is going to look up at you, it becomes very dangerous. So when you're playing with these things, I would want that teachers be a little more human, first of all, and be really skilled at what they're doing, consciously knowing that this is what happens generally, but always be on the lookout. At least now that we've things have changed a lot, and people with special abilities are getting some attention at least. Because I remember a lot of dyslexic, but nobody really knew what was the problem. But they knew that there was a problem with this child. The child is not able to write properly, and made fun of, and the teachers also not taking in, active interest in that. But right now things have changed.
Better, yeah.
I think the entire education system also needs to change, because I go back to the point where we learn for a job.
Exactly, yeah.
And we learn skills. I think skill training is brilliant because that gives you a skill.
Mhm.
The skill should be there for every single thing. We should have short-term courses for every single thing.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
For sewing, for carpentry, for gardening. Why not? Because those are all experiences. Unless you've experienced, how do you know you like it or you don't like it?
That's for sure. Yeah.
So I think that and I also have this thing called identity, right? My identity today for me is a sum total of all my experiences, and that's about it. Whatever I have experienced and I have retained from that, that's who I am right now, because I've changed according to that. There will be external factors, but those external factors also filter through who I am and what I allow.
Yeah.
And that is how, so for myself at least, I have decided I'm going to experience as much as I can, whatever I can, and try and do it for a certain period of time and see what I like from it. And I'll retain whatever I like from it. But I'll move on. I'll never judge myself. No, I have to specialize in this. I don't have to. I don't want to be a master. I want to be a jack of all trades. I would really want to know every single thing that's happening around me.
Yeah, and this sort of points back to the thing we were speaking of earlier. And I think, so this is how I sort of see the arts, because I was sort of hinting at asking you how you sort of look at the arts. We sort of never got to that. But I believe the same way, because I think that when you spoke about that initial thing of, if you're sitting down to write a work of fiction, or if you're painting a painting or something of that sort, it is simply all because of the people you've spoken to, the places you've been. They all sort of come together and form that work of art. So you can't truly call it yours. But, right? I don't know. Can you?
No, you can. No, I can call it mine. But at least I'm conscious that it's not just me. It's just filtered through. It's just passing on through me.
Yeah.
I'm just the medium for it. And I'm not talking about higher power. I'm just talking about whatever has surrounded me and pushed me to this point. And that's what. So in a lot of cases, a lot of artists actually, when they're faced with a white canvas, we develop, cold feet.
Okay.
So a lot of people I know actually just put a stroke on there, or just have a background color. So it's no longer white. I mean, I don't know why they do that. They can just get colored, get somebody to just paint not have a white canvas. But that act, especially for abstract artists, the moment there is a stroke, there's something there. It starts your brain to think. And that's important, especially for a lot of my abstract art was, just in the moment. So I just do it, finish it. I'll just come back once more, see what I see, and then I'll end it there. What is happening is I put a stroke, and then I kind of move from that. That stroke is pushing me to do something about it. Extend it, erase it, whatever it wants me to do.
Yeah.
But there's a trigger. So I think these triggers are very important, and learning about these triggers helps. And then I learned a little later, after some time, that trigger was actually based on some other trigger. So just learning about myself, I think.
So because we've been speaking a lot about like the specialization aspect of things, but also this whole aspect of being self-taught, is there something that you sort of would prioritize more than the other, or do you think that one
I'm
can
not
sort of
necessarily talking about self-taught. What I'm talking about is experience. So that teaching yourself through experience, but that experience should ideally come through the traditional things. There's
Right.
absolutely nothing wrong in going the traditional way. There is a format for it. Say it's a watercolor painting, right? There's a specific pattern that you need to do it. Do it. And only when you're doing it, you learn what you like or you don't like about that medium.
Yeah.
And that's the important part that you need to take away from that. You need not continue with watercolor, but you can take away from that, and then you can use it as when you do using acrylics, or you're doing something else completely. So just the colors and how they float. Maybe you become somebody who's involved in textile designing. Your colors, your compositions, your collections, they can come from a different medium completely.
But what you're saying is that if you sort of work in a particular medium, you will then sort of understand the intricacies, perhaps, of the medium,
I
which
think it's
you can sort of
important
play
to
around
know.
with it, right?
Yeah. Self-taught, again, not taking anything away, because people like even Francis Bacon said, I don't need a college because I do what I do and I'm good at it, right?
Yeah.
And that's by doing, and doing in a very focused fashion, trying to learn from that as to what I like and what I want to repeat and what I want to retain, and what I want to remove from my practice. But not everybody is really, evolved. I think that's a sense of evolution where you're able to really understand what your mind is thinking, because your mind can play games. So if you follow somebody's technique, just copy it. So a lot of this study is very important. This human anatomy, I think that's very important for every single kind of art, because you know better, be it for a sculptor, be it for a painter, installation artist, anybody. If you know the basics of things, you're able to defragment it completely, break it down to the bones, and then build it up. I think then you have a better chance at trying to actually express what you've thought in your mind. Otherwise, you are limited in your expression. So your technique, your skill becomes, limited. So I think it is important to learn.
But even those, even whatever you may have been thinking, these are still barriers in some form, right? Because if you are going a traditional route, however much they may be sort of like aiding your process, they too have come through some sort of like presuppositions that the person sort of laying forward, right? Yeah,
absolutely, because each one of us will pass on our biases to the other person. So that's just not possible to be, what's the word? Where you can be unbiased completely. Right. It's not going to happen. And you will be limited in certain things, and you will be prejudiced about certain things, which is fine. And so what do you do about that once you know that this is my bias or this is my prejudice? Do you change it, or do you make it a part of your life? No, this is exactly who I am. So how do you use that information? Are you going to change your life for that or not?
So this sort of leads me to the other sort of question that I think a lot about, which is like, I believe quite genuinely that all art is inherently political. And what I mean by that, this sort of leads to the same particular thing. Because you might think you've only painted like a picture of a landscape, but there might be something that's inherent in that.
The fact that you did not paint anything political is political in itself.
Yeah.
You can never be apolitical, because there will always be a reason why you did that. maybe people might say that in the current situation, it's probably not a good thing to paint certain things, right? I mean, the current regime or the current type of art critics, they would not agree to it. So you always self-censor. So the fact that you self-censored has already brought in that political part to it. And I think all art is political.
Yeah. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Do you think the art and the artist can be separated? So in some sense, like I maybe sort of hinted at that. So for example, when the artist is on the journey of sort of creating that work of art, and then when it's done and it's on the walls, or if I'm going and looking at it and you are going and looking at it, we have totally different perceptions of how and what we make of the art, right? So does that sort of mean that the artist then isn't as important and it's simply the art form? Like the art form has taken a life of its own, which many of the successful artworks have. Any artwork does,
I think
actually.
that's what it should be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Shakespeare wrote whatever plays he wrote at whatever time he did.
Yeah.
They've been reinterpreted and represented, everywhere across the world in films and theater and whatever. The artwork has its own life.
Yeah.
And it will have its own life every single time it is done. And, done as in it's an interaction between an audience and whatever it is there. Can we separate the art and the artist? I think a lot of celebrity thing comes from a lot of, so that connection is very difficult to remove. So you might really like something, but it's an artist you don't know about, or the world doesn't really know a lot about. So for you, somehow it's not as great because not everybody has said that it's great. So that thing never really goes away, So that's I think it's difficult to remove that from our understanding.
So I've been trying to think about this, and I was referring to my conversation with Anj, and this is something I asked him as well, how I sort of interact with art, or what art I'm sort of drawn towards. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's primarily because of the bent of mind I do have, or the things that interest me otherwise, and that's primarily what I seek out in my art as well. So if I'm walking into a gallery, there'd be certain works of art that will stick out to me more and will want me to spend more time engaging with them as compared to others. Have you thought around this? Like, why do we engage with certain forms of art? Is it primarily because
I think it's because of us,
yeah,
each individual. I mean, that's what I was actually saying, that our individual structure, mental structure, dictates how we are going to interact with the art. And it can change if we are trying to, if we are with somebody whose work we do not necessarily like, but what's happening is that person is important in my life for whatever XYZ reason. So if I'm standing with them, I'll still enjoy that work, supposedly.
Yeah.
Because I'm enjoying that company more than the artwork. But I will, as an individual, when I have to, open heart situation where I know what I'm liking, what I'm not liking, it's based on my biases. It's based on my experiences, based on what I consciously and subconsciously understand what I like. Yeah. So I come from my perspective and I look at an artwork, and my engagement is individual. And this engagement also changes every time I look at it. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So it's not constant as well. So next day I come and look at it, and it's completely
very different feel.
Yeah, it's talking to me in a different tone. Yeah. So it will change. It depends on my mindset at that specific time. What is happening, which is so beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I just love if that could be articulated every time. But then again, it's too much of data to analyze. But a computer could do that. AI and machine learning, these things can, help us to, if that data was available and it could be picked up, analyzed. But then I'm also looking at a show called The Peripheral. Okay. And it's something like what Black Mirror, right? And how technology becomes a part, and how it takes away everything that we are human for. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting how, if technology is a part of our lives, who uses the technology? Even if it's technology using technology to, just know everything about us, but it could be people actually doing it. So it's actually about this simulated games where you become a part of the simulated game. And I don't want to give out everything, but all I just want to say that it's quite interesting. And it's not a novel concept. Mm-hmm. Similar concepts have been done with the the treatment of it is really well done. So you get a part of the game and you start living in the game? So the game and the reality start to become one. Spoiler alert. Okay. Yeah. I think the trailers also carried that. So fair enough. Yeah. So, I just think that where do we stop understanding, because this whole thing came from that part that, I cannot assess everything that I experienced.
don't
But
you
if my thoughts could be captured, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. If my thoughts could be captured and we could assess what triggers me, what how I respond. It's a brilliant data for advertising as well.
Mhm.
It's a brilliant thing, right? And that's what the Minority Report was all about, prediction and everything. So it can predict what I want, and even before I think that
Yeah.
things would be available, right?
Or know it better than you think, or know yourself better than you do, in
Maybe,
some sense.
but that whole excitement about
Yeah.
something unknown, I think it goes away, right? I mean, so that becomes a regular job, right? That's the problem with a regular job. If you know that what you're going to do every single day,
Yeah.
I don't want, at least I don't want to live that kind of life. I want things to change. I want the unpredictability. A friend of mine has this Astro app that he's developed, and
Oh, damn.
and so the other day we were playing cricket, so we play cricket together, and I asked him, so what does your Astro? And he said, you just have to check that. I'm like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to know. I just don't want to know what's happening, even if it is right or true or not true. I'm sure it's based on something that you've developed, right? Even our palmistry and everything. I just don't want to know. I mean, it's interesting to talk about, interesting to see it's happening to others. I don't want anybody to tell me, because when that's happening, I will try and do the reverse. I know that in myself. I want to rebel against whatever has been dictated, that this is how it is going to be. I don't want to keep that. I don't want to not do something that I would have really wanted to do just because somebody has said that, you're going to do this. And I don't want to do that. I'm sorry. Probably too many no's and everything. Too many negatives in that and confusion there. But basically, I don't want my future to be foretold to me, so that I try and change it because it's been foretold.
Fair enough.
I just want it to be there. I just want to be surprised. Probably death will also be a surprise.
So this is really interesting, but there's so many things to sort of unpick. I would like to sort of go back when we were sort of talking about like engaging with the work of art. Does it ever happen? Because it's happened with me with a few artists or like a few films or a few books, that after reading a particular work of fiction, like I've been a totally different person after. Like it's had a very deep impression on my life, or like how I sort of start looking at things. Doesn't art do that? Like there are certain works of visual art, or there are certain films that after you've sort of consumed it, or after you sort of engaged with it, you don't know what to do with yourself like a few days.
So let's not go too far. I was going to give you examples about, when first time I read Fountainhead, the second time I read, and the third time, and I've kept on repeatedly reading it, over a period of time, after a year or two or whatever gap and all. And each time I pick up something different, but that's not what I'm trying. I will talk about. Let's talk about something like this film called Udham Singh.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
A lot of people don't know anything about Jallianwala Bagh, what happened there. A lot of people know some things of what happened, right? What if they were to see that film? And it's stuck. There are issues with the line that they've taken and everything. But a lot of it is fact-based. And that fact that it happened, that entire, that tragedy, it happened. And there were people who were on the side behind the gun shooting. And there were people on the other side facing those bullets. And that's something that's which Hindi films have not really picked up. The gore, it's just there. The bullet hitting the person. And the leg coming off or whatever. I mean, I know it could be traumatic for people as well. Once you've seen that, can you unsee it? You know about it. And I'm saying that this is just a film. What if you were to look at the Guernica, which was by Picasso, right? And a lot of people quote about that. Not just because it's a statement of his about the World War, but the fact that he actually made it for that. He was outspoken enough, ready to take on. And I'm sure he must have had his privileges around to be able to do that. Can you just go away and not realize that, war, what does war lead to? I mean, it leads to death. Whichever side, whoever is in the right or the wrong or whatever, there is death. So there will be a crying, mother somewhere there. Or probably the mother is gone. So you really don't know. So can you really move away from that work of art? Can you move away from Chitto Prasad's Famine, right? I mean, I know that artwork has to be strong enough to be able to pass on that message to you. But you have to be also open to receive that message. If you're standing in front of it, you read about the text. If you don't know anything about what's happening, you don't get impacted immediately. You go back, just check about the Bengal famine and how many actually people died.
And how many people actually know about it? Because there's so many people.
We just moved on.
Yeah.
We've had this incident in Gujarat.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it will be. People won't even
There's
remember
so many people
it.
who don't. Yeah. There's
People
still so many
just
people,
forget about it. We've forgotten COVID deaths. We just moved on. I know that, that's the resilience of humans also, right? Time heals and everything, and you got to move on. You can't really conquer death, so you just move on and you just forget, and
Like what Stalin said, one death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic.
Yeah.
So
you just move on. And so in the 80s, when we had the Punjab problem, we would have every day in the newspaper, we would have so many 6 terrorists killed, so many Hindus killed, taken down from the bus. Beyond a point, there was just numbers. And I was not living in Punjab, I was living in Delhi. So it's not necessarily just happening around me. So initially it kind of shocks you, it numbs you, and then it just becomes part of life. So many people in the last decade or so have been made refugees for whatever reasons. And there are many reasons and many countries. So let's not name them.
Yeah.
But each is a catastrophe. Each life, each family, everything just lost. And we just become normal. We just move on. We just move on. And it's a good thing to be able to move on. Otherwise, we just cannot live if we have the burden of everything. But we just move on. And that's also a problem.
And don't see the sort of we just sort of don't learn from the lessons from history. We don't see the similar things that perhaps are
we love to
happening.
repeat. We love to repeat in different forms, but we love to repeat the same mistake in a different form.
Because it's a very sort of scary concept to think about it. So one of the interesting things I sort of came across, and I was thinking about this for so long, was that when Hitler, this was before the stuff happened with the Jews, but one of his most famous speeches, I don't know if you've come across it, he says that who today remembers the Armenians? And most of his sort of inspiration came from the Armenian genocide, which the Turkish government still sort of declines. And he was saying that, sure, I will get a lot of criticism for this for maybe 100, 200, 300, 400 years. But if we are able to sustain this, and if we are able to go long enough, like who remembers the Armenians today, or who remembers what Leopold did in Belgium, like in Congo, and how much of the wealth that Belgium have is perhaps through the raiding and the murders of Congolese.
If the writings had not been done, if the documentation had not been done, who would remember? I mean, who would remember? That's the problem, right? Nobody really remembers. Everybody remembers because history is never a fact. History is, again, going back to that, it's always the victor writing something there. And it's again a matter of perception. Same thing can, seem different to different people.
Yeah, so Winston Churchill can win the Nobel Prize for Literature for his account of the World War and have 2 references for the Bengal famine. But if there was someone who was perhaps from a family who suffered from it, might have a totally different perception.
I think all these prizes are anyways, the glorious ways of doing things. I mean, there's a reason why they're given out. And I don't think there's a fair reason why awards are given. At least I don't know. I mean, maybe they are there.
This sort of leads me to, so I was going through the blog, and you guys have a great blog, by the way. I'd recommend the viewers to sort of check it out. So over there, you also have critiques. So what is your idea when you're sort of critiquing a work of art? Can a work of art be critiqued?
I think it should be. Can or not, I mean, we are humans, and especially we are Indians. We critique that glass of water that has been brought to us. We can critique any single thing. No, but the point is to come from a point of view which is your own and articulate in simple language as to why something appeals to you or does not appeal to you. Also giving a context of what the general people will take away from it. I think that's a decent way of critiquing. And we just had the other day Prem Singh sir, who used to be the principal of College of Art, Chandigarh, and a very, very good artist and well-traveled artist as well. And he's well-spoken as well. And he wrote about how art criticism today, I mean, there aren't many people actually writing about it. There are very limited people. I mean, there's no space for art criticism in the newspapers or the magazines. It's shrunk to the point where it's just not there almost. But a lot of criticism is still being done. A lot of people are still writing. And I think a lot of it is advertisement. It's just paid promotion. So you hire somebody to write for you. I'm not saying that the journalists should not be paid or the critics should not be paid for whatever they're doing. But there is there's a slight
Yeah.
conflict situation there. Because how can you write? So if you can still keep your objectivity there, where you say that something is not right. And the other day there was a conversation between so Vasco and Ranjan
Okay.
were at an exhibition of DAG, which is a brilliant exhibition at Bikaner House.
Oh yeah,
It's
I
about
recently went,
the March of
March of Independence.
March of Freedom, I think.
March of Freedom, sorry, yeah.
Something like that. I'm forgetting the name of it.
It's a great exhibition.
It's a brilliant
Yeah.
exhibition, and amongst them, they actually thought that it was a brilliant exhibition. But they found the questions that were right at the end, which was probably aimed towards a younger audience. They found them to be unnecessary and scripted in a manner which they felt could have been done better. And they wrote about that. I mean, Vasco wrote it in his post, and he had, since he knew the curator and whatever, he tagged them, and they went defensive.
Okay.
And I'm fine. My point is, it is important to hold your fort and say that this was done. This is the reason why it was done. But they seem defensive because and this is how it should be done. You're wrong.
Oh, right.
No, I don't think that's not being constructive, because the two of them were not trying to demean what they had done.
They're just asking a good question. Yeah.
And there is a logical answer, and that's about it. Doesn't need to be any calling out of sorts. Anyways, all things good and normal. Their relations are fine. But
yeah.
I think that critique part, right? That it should not become. People should be open to criticism also, and should be able to judge when it is constructive criticism and when it is, because there is a distinct difference between the two. People trying to pull you down with anything will criticize. That's a different thing. But people actually speaking good about you and saying that, this is something I didn't like. The fact that they are saying that I didn't like means that it is their perception, first of all, and not necessarily your fault. So you don't need to take offense on that.
Mm-hmm.
But you can at least have a dialogue and try and understand why the other person felt that way.
Yeah.
Expressing your reasons why, and trying to understand why they felt that it was not up to their mark. Maybe they feel that you are so good that anything less than that so good is bad for them.
Right.
So I think that engagement needs to happen, and paid promotions need to go. And it's very difficult. It's becoming very difficult where you use only good words to express about art. Yeah. Nice is not nice. Explain why it's nice. Why is it
what
a pink that?
Nice?
Yeah. Why is it a pink that you like? Does it remind you of something? Does it remind you of that, early morning or whatever, late, or baby's bottom? I don't know. What does it remind you of? And you feel that, there is a because all these things are based on some nostalgia, some understanding. You could have read somewhere, seen somewhere, experienced somewhere. And that's what you connect with and try to express it out to the public, whoever is the reader. So I think it's important to do these criticisms very objectively.
So you talked about this whole aspect, that this whole incident at Bikaner House with the curators there. You are a curator yourself, and you curate a lot of these exhibitions in Delhi and otherwise as well. What are some things that go in your mind when you are sort of putting together an exhibition, when it is about getting certain artists on? Or there's also one interesting thing I'd like to share. So I didn't know about this. I don't know if this is particularly a case that happens in India, but I went to this art gallery once with my friend, and he told me that why you started from the left, or when you're in a gallery, it should always start from the right. Now I don't know if he was talking a very European centric way of looking at art, or maybe it was just that particular gallery. But is that a thing as well? Like,
I would always start from the left.
Oh, acha.
I'm surprised.
Start from the, I don't know, either one.
So that's let's get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
The curator's job, and I really don't know, and I keep asking other curators because I'm not trained as a curator. I have experience as a curator. I've just started curating, and I've tried to understand, okay, this is what comes under the ambit of the title of a curator. What does the curator do? Because the curator seems to be everything and nothing as well, right? That person is supposed to take care of the fabrication, of the deliveries, of the transportation, the display, the words, the PR, the sale, every single thing can kind of come into that ambit. And I have kind of asked others also, what do they think? What is good curation? What is bad curation? And how do you do it? And I learn that even the people who have supposedly come from an academic point of view of being a curator find it tough. Because there is no easy way of doing it. There can be a standard format, but if you don't customize it to your own self, and to the person whose work you are representing. Because when you are working as a curator, either you've been hired as a curator or you've decided that you will curate and you've got somebody to fund you, because finances are important, right?
For sure.
So I have generally worked for the artist. So I don't work with the galleries. I work with the artist. So when I start working with my role as a curator starts with understanding what they're doing, what kind of body of work they have, what can fit into what they want to represent themselves right now, right? So, and I generally try to do solo shows of artists. I don't. There are a lot of curators who take money and exhibit,
multiple artists,
which is fine, and that's what they're trying to do, and it's more of a fair. It's more of an attempt to sell those artworks with a specific bent of mind. I try to. So if I'm doing a group show that I'm trying to curate, I'm looking at a common theme. What is that common theme that should bring these people together? Why is it being done? 2017, I did a show called the Desi Canvas, which happened along with the drifting canvas, which was Van Gogh and Monet and everything, with the digital one at Select City Walk. I did week by week 8 shows. Each week there would be a different show, because that entire thing was supposed to be for 2 months. And I decided that I'll do all these 8 shows and do them different. Let people keep coming back and different people. So that was an opportunity for me. They'd given me a carte blanche. You do whatever you feel like doing. And I'm really thankful to the art fraternity, because they opened up their, studios for me to pick works and do. From Anupam Sood to Paramjeet Singh, Arpana Kaur, I was able to bring all of them in different phases, in different exhibitions with different titles. There's a different reason why they're there, right? So I tried to do each exhibition with a concern. How do they blend together? Even if it is a sculpture and if it is a figurative and an abstract coming together, why do they come together?
Yeah.
How do I present it to the person that this is the reason, this is the thread that kind of connects them, and make it sane and legible and understandable for that person, and not just because I've said it and I'm the curator and you've got to believe whatever I'm saying. No, you use your mind, but here's a trigger. Here's my entry ticket, and then now you enter and see how it is happening. So those are the group shows that I would want to do. If I'm working for a solo show, I actually sit down with this artist, look at their entire, body of work, criticize that, this is looking nice, this is not looking nice. Why do you ask them questions? Because when I ask them questions, they come to know about themselves.
Of course, yeah.
Why do you choose that specific medium? Why do you like this size? Why do you like to work sitting? Why do you do this? These questions help them also, if they retain. I don't always, underline it and, that this is the reason. No, I also don't understand philosophy as much. So I'm not trying to be a philosopher here. But I feel that when I ask these questions, they're able to understand better about themselves. So we're selecting their works based on whatever we are curating, the gallery. And then comes is
there an input from the artist as well? Or is it?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a to and fro. At the end of the day, and I tell them all the time that I am consulting. I am sharing my opinion, but it's your show. At the end of the day, you hear me out completely. You learn my reasons why I'm saying that. You don't want to go with that, and you don't want to do specifically as you have decided, go with that. But this conversation needs to happen at least. I need to be sure that you've understood what I was saying and your decision is based on what you want to do, irrespective of whatever I said. And I can live with that as long as that's...
because people are coming for their name, right? Like,
no, this particular art. It's their art. Yeah. That artist, why should I change their persona, right? They're not supposed to be filtered through me. Yeah. I am just going to be that mirror for them who's asking them the questions where they have not been looking at. So that's very important for them. That's why, that's what I feel is very important. That during this entire exercise, and I try to tell them everything that is happening. They don't need to come back to me the next time. They can probably, use it for themselves. How to choose, what to do, what are the pitfalls, what happens. Even sharing vendors and names and framers and PR companies and everything. I'll try and bring, and I'll educate them about it also. That these are the 5 PR companies. This is what they're good at. This is what their pricing is. What is your bracket? What do you want to spend? How much do you want to spend? So give them that information, because I want to educate. I want to pass it on to them. It's up to them to use it or not use it, right? They could still come back to me, and that's happened also. So the thing is, while I'm educating them, I am also learning more about what I this structure happens spontaneously. I don't prepare for it. I kind of know it, and like this conversation that I'm having is just spontaneous. I'm just responding, and that is why a lot of times I'm moving away from the actual question, because I'm
it's
just
a podcast.
saying
We can do that. Right?
that's
It's not like a
important.
soundbite you hear on like Republic TV or one of these other platforms. Right.
So moving on from that, no comments on that. No, so what I'm trying to say is that my education, and I'm not the teacher, but I'm just sharing my experience, because I feel that when they take that decision, which is their decision to make, they will have an informed decision, because they know the options, they choose from the options. Say I've worked with artists for a couple of years before we actually gone in for an exhibition. There are few with whom, the conversations have happened 4-5 years back, and the body of work is still happening. Why should I, push them to do something? At the end of the day, it is their show that has to happen. So I educate them on what they are creating, why they are creating, having these conversations, because these conversations are important for the artist to understand about themselves. But beyond a point, it becomes something that just needs to be done, because there's a deadline approaching. The PR will need, certain names there, the images have to be there, and artists can be really bad with data and data management.
So data is
photo nahi hogi, the photos are not available. We don't know what is the size of this. I don't know when I finished this. So I don't have the dates for this. So all these things are important. So each artist, trying to help them build their own portfolio. That becomes a portfolio, right? You take photographs, it's a very basic thing, but it has to be done. Because when you're making the price list, you're making the, just the exhibitor, whatever you're making, it has to be in a format that can be given. There was a time when people used to make catalogs, and that's become, exorbitantly, just not possible right now, unless you are funded by somebody or you are funding it yourself and you've got big pockets. Most people do an online kind of a thing, just make an just a PDF
E-invite,
of whatever. Just not just an e-invite, but the catalog, of works and everything, and the description about them, A lot of people just don't want that also, because that's a lot of, work. And artists shirk away from this kind of, and they want somebody else to do it. I am fine with somebody else, capturing it together and putting it in a structured format, which is understandable for the reader who is going to open that catalog. But that information should come from the artist, at least. That artist should know what is happening, why it is happening, what is the title of that work, why is that work titled in so it is titled. The framing is important. What kind of a frame are we putting? Because everything that you do at the end of the day is for a purpose. You want to exhibit your artwork for somebody who's going to walk in, right? What do you want to convey is one question. How do you get these people to reach? So that's the PR, that's everything. How do you make a list of people, send it out to them? Who do you need to meet? Who's a chief guest? Do you need a chief guest? Do you need an opening? You don't need an opening. So you have to work around with these artists and get to that point where their comfort with their own exhibition is there. I think that is, at least for me, that's very important. When we do the exhibition display, and that's where I think that's where the conversation, and I said that I'll come back to it in a minute, if we start from the left or the right or whatever.
Oh, right, yeah.
I think these aids should be there. Where do you start from? So I walk in, say I am slightly understanding of what's happening in art, and I like to go to galleries. I still need support to understand how the show has been put up. So I would also think about what is the vantage point when I enter. So I enter a gallery. This is what I see. What do I see? Do I want to restrict the view? Do I want to give a longer view? Do I want to give the view of every single thing in a single shot? So you could just walk in. A lot of galleries are just like a single cube, right? It could be just one large hall. Yeah. So I could just walk into the center and turn 360 degrees and I've seen the entire show. Yeah. Do I want to create barriers for people to walk through, a labyrinth or something? There has to be a purpose to why the exhibition has been placed in that fashion. So that's very important. But while I am doing that, I have to be conscious about that what I am thinking and which is obvious to me might not be so for the person who walks in. So how do you create aids? I remember people putting, so you have these insoles of the shoes.
Oh, right, yeah.
They actually just put insoles in the direction that you need to move. So that's actually a very easy way of messaging, right? or you could put the number 1, 2, 3, and that
Huh.
already puts us,
Or some people do like the marker, like the
just a mark
arrows
or whatever,
yeah.
I mean, you put a table in the middle and see the difference, how it makes a difference. Does the person come straight at you? Or a lot of people actually avoid the first instance to just come and talk.
Okay.
If it's an unknown artist, they'll come and they'll try to avoid because they don't want to have the conversation yet. They don't know what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Right. So where do you place that? And where do you place that artist within the display of the artworks? It's very important. Does the artist even need to be there? Or should the art be able to speak for it on its own? Do we need a text next to it? What is the lighting that is required? Because lighting is also very important. How do you highlight? Because all these things work on a very subconscious level for a visitor. So I would like to use all things available to me and at the same time use the basic messaging, options to make it easy for the person to consume what they have come to. I mean, they've made an effort.
Yeah.
They've made an effort, so respect that.
And if, as you're saying, like if you initiate these kind of aids or these kind of small things that might make the the experience a little more convenient for perhaps someone, like I was referencing the whole aspect, there's some people who are simply scared because they're perhaps intimidated by the whole gallery scene, and I think that would go a long way. Yeah, but you'd probably have artists who'd be, so there'd be some who'd probably be could be too enthusiastic, so they would sort of be very pushing towards as to this is how we could do this, and there would be some who would be hands off, right? But that's simply on how things
I just let that be. I mean, I just speak my stuff to a point where I know that they are trying to receive, and if I see that they don't want to receive, then I mean, ideally I don't work with such artists who just don't want to listen. Then there's no point in coming to me. The point is that if you're choosing me as a curator, why are you choosing me? What do you really want from me? And I ask all the artists to at least explain to me what do they expect out of me. Because I tell them, I don't know what is the role of a curator. I can do a lot of things. Which part do you want me to do? So then that's when we try and understand. And once we have established that, they have a right overruling every single thing that I say. And I'll be fine with that. As long as I know that they're open to listening. Because the challenge comes when it's all premeditated and they just want my name. I mean, although I'm not a name, but some people feel. So they ask me and I don't want to agree for that.
You'd probably get a lot of questions from perhaps upcoming artists as well, like as to how they can sort of showcase their work or how they can sort of work their way up, sort of getting their works in different walls and different galleries across the country, etc. Is there some tips that you do give to perhaps people who are upcoming in this space?
So there can't be same tips for everyone.
Of course,
because that individual artist is important, right? Is he a sculptor? Is he an artist? I mean, where has he? What level of career is he at? And he or she at, and what do they want to do, and what do they want to achieve? Do they want to just sell their works? Do they want to be known better? Do they specifically want to do this so that they can apply for a grant somewhere? There can be different reasons why a person is exhibiting or want to do certain things in their life, in terms of getting their art out there. So once I know that thing, and I generally have time. I don't know. I find time for people. So I don't mind. As long as there's nothing really, really pressing where I just can't do anything about it, I'm so sorry. But I don't mind conversations. Because I learn more from them. While I'm telling them, I learn a lot of things that I know. Okay, I know this also. Okay, I know this person also.
I just tell my YouTube viewers that I have a podcast. I just use these as like therapy sessions for myself primarily to pick the brains of my guests, or just.
I think one of the reasons why I came on this is that also, because I am also enjoying this entire thing. When I speak, I hear what I speak, and as long as I'm again, that conscious about what I'm saying, so I judge myself also, but at the same time I learn so much about myself. So just coming back to that question where you asked about what are the tips or something, they're very basic things, and I think looking at what the senior artists have also done, they've done brilliantly, whatever, but they've done brilliantly in a time and age where things were much different. Today we live in an era where social media, NFTs, everything is a reality. So you can never really go away from there. So it is important for the artist to try and understand who they are, first of all. What is their art about? And then if they should always have a portfolio. They should always create images, small snapshots. They should have emails prepared for to send out. If they're scoping any gallery to represent them, or just to have a conversation and understanding from them, they should know which galleries to apply to. Not every gallery is going to be there. So just check for the gallery, check about what's happening in that gallery at least. Do they represent, artists who are of the same age bracket, style of work? What do they do? And it is important to not pester them. They have their life
Of
settled.
course. Yeah.
You want to reach out to them.
Yeah.
Send them a very simple mail with just small thumbnails and all. And ask them if there is an opportunity either for you to bring over your works to them, or on an iPad or in a digital format or in a printed format as a scrapbook, or not scrapbook, but as a printed portfolio.
Yeah.
You can take to them, or you can bring a couple of works to them, or you can invite them to your studio. That can be a subsequent thing. Or they can, if they want, you can send them slightly higher resolution image. Don't send them immediately because that just clogs their email. I don't think they're looking for that. And there are many people applying, right? So I think these are tips, that very basic things that an artist can do to reach out to them. And like we were talking about, read more to create more. Go out there and see other people's work. Go to the galleries, not just for networking, I'm saying, but it is a good place to network. The people are there.
Yeah.
So
and they're like-minded people, because if they're
Yeah.
coming to a gallery,
yeah. I mean, you could be really focused that, no, I want to speak to this, this person, because this person is going to be there. I know that person is going to be there. Fine.
Yeah.
Go and do it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, be truthful and see what is around you. Right? Because somebody else's exhibition opening might not be the best place for you to, give your card and say, you can go with that mindset.
Yeah.
And if things happen, give your card. But that's different from, really, because people can judge.
Yeah.
People can judge that, why you are there. So, yeah, I mean, and you need to be there.
And I think many times, if you don't have this agenda in the back of your mind that, acha, I have to get my work here, or if I have to get this guy on my show, or if I have to get this whatever, and if you just go up to them and have a general conversation, I think that just leaves a better impression. And obviously, if that's something you want to do further on, later on, if that's something that they're interested in, I think that's a more healthier and a better way.
Yeah. This is normal networking, which can happen without being really blunt
Exactly.
about it.
Yeah.
Just be casual while you're doing that, and it can happen. It can happen. That's the whole point. You don't really need to push it a lot, but you need to be prepared. What if they ask you, okay, do you have anything? Do you have an Instagram? Do you have a portfolio that you can share? If you don't, then it's going to be go waste, right? You got that opportunity and you are not able to utilize that. So at least be prepared with the stuff that you can prepare. I think that's what I would tell them.
So like we've spoken about perhaps some aspiring artists and how they can sort of work around the whole space. Are there sort of some, because we were talking initially about when as a curator, some of the things that you keep in mind when you are curating. But so in this conversation with Ranjan that I was referencing earlier, something I didn't actually know, because the National Gallery of Modern Art is one place I haven't been. I've been to a bunch of others, but somehow that's been one I haven't been to. And you guys told me that the ticket price is like 20 rupees. And
It used to be,
okay. But still, like, and it's quite, like, the footfall isn't the best. What are some tips that you have, or maybe why people should engage with
I
art?
can't guide why NGMA does not get enough footfall. I don't think they will agree.
But the location's
that
quite great as
now.
well, right? Like it's India Gate or something close to that. Yeah.
It's on the India Gate.
Yeah.
It's right next to Bikaner House.
Yeah.
If you've been to Bikaner House, this is right next to it, just before that in the circle. So I did a course from Indira Gandhi National Center for IGNCA, and it was on cultural management. And we had a specific thing about museum outreach, how to get people, right? I mean, museums and organizations of art, how should and what should they do to get people to become a part of there? I mean, what can they do more? So like you have examples of Tate and other, MoMA and all, where they have programs for children, for single moms, so they are thinking out of the box and trying to get a newer audience in. Because the artists and tourists are definitely going to come to all museums, right? I mean, because everybody knows that tourists come for to the museums. How do you get other people to come? And how do you build a community? Because what is the nature of a museum? Is it just going to be a repository of dead things and things of the past? Or can this museum be a really evolving thing, and it can become a place for community build up? Can it be a place where people congregate to discuss what is there in the gallery only? How do you get that to happen? And that's very important. How do you make it a alive space? It has not happened in most of our museums. We don't have enough museums. That's also true. We need many more museums, I personally think. But again, if those museums are just going to be
the same
spaces-
state that the consisting, because many of, even with this museums that we do have and the galleries, many of
Yeah.
them don't have the best, like they aren't in the best of shape. Like someone was telling me,
Yeah.
like a friend of mine, he I think he did history from St. Stephen's, and he was saying that some of these works of art and some of these manuscripts that they sort of have to go through for their assignments perhaps, or just
are in very poor condition.
yeah, and some of them have been lost like thousands of years old simply because the libraries aren't kept in check or whatever the politics
So
of it.
human error will always be there. Apathy will always be there. Greed will always be there. People will sell off things, and so all these things will lead to a point where they suffer.
Yeah.
Be it the Lalit Kala Academy, be it the National Gallery of Modern Art, ICCR, private galleries, private museums, public museums, so all they will suffer because there are plethora of reasons. It's not just one reason. And it's not just them who are at fault.
Of course.
Every one of us are at fault. Have we taken an initiative to do something about it? The National Museum the building is going to be demolished. How many of the people are actually speaking about it? I don't see anybody. I have actually sent out petitions. I have sent out mails to artists to at least to come together, that the National Museum content is supposed to be relocated to the North and the South Block. Fine, they've decided without our consent, but that's okay. Supposedly because we've elected them into power, we no longer have a right to question, which is stupid, because that's the entire thing, that whoever is in power should be answerable for what they do.
Yeah.
And something of such a large scale, there should have been proper public debate. And I'm sure that, once I've said this, there'll be a lot of people out there saying two things. One, that the public doesn't know. That's one thing which makes no sense. Second, they will say that there has been a lot of debate. There was even the court case and, they were heard. No, there was not. I'm sorry to say, and, with all respect to the judiciary, but you're not performing. You're not performing. You've not heard everyone. I was not heard. Let's put it that way. I was not heard. So, and I know that a lot of other people were also, who are substantial, who are architects and bodies and everything, they were not heard. But just coming back from that, why is there no outcry to save that building? That building was the first national museum that we had, right? Currently in Bihar, in Patna, we had the Patna Museum, which was already there. A new Bihar Museum has come, and it's a very different kind of a museum. It's been designed by the Japanese architect and all. And it's a beautiful space, how it has been created. And a lot of...
This is in Patna itself.
It's in Patna itself. And it's just, I think, about 4 kilometers from the Patna Museum.
From the old piece. Okay, yeah.
And they're right now building a tunnel underneath to connect the two museums. They've decided that both will remain, and one will carry this, the other will carry this. So they've made an understanding of... They have created new without demolishing what existed. I'm not even saying that, you connect everything, and at least let that museum, that National Museum building, which is beautiful, remain as something. Because I remember from my younger days, I have been there, school, family, we've been there repeatedly. And I'm sure that the others would have to make it a space for art and culture. Why not? Why do you need to demolish every single thing? What is this
fascination by creating from scratch?
Why do you need to demolish to create?
Yeah.
I can't understand that. So where is the outcry to save that building? Where is the outcry when, where is the support when Museo Camera actually reaches out and says that we are not necessarily very funded, we need your support. Can you buy tickets for the future? So whenever we open after the COVID thing, at least we can pay everyone that we have on our staff. How many people actually did that? And, Aditya is doing a brilliant job that he keeps it on, and he's got people there, and there are so many activities that happen there. But where is the public really trying to do? No. Just because I'm not an artist does not mean that I don't engage with art.
Of course.
and does not mean that I have a contribution towards art. Artists need to survive,
Of course.
right?
Like
Why do you
everyone
need
else.
to bargain with these artists for every single, I mean, whatever price they might have quoted, and they might be absurd, but life is absurd.
Mhm.
Why should an iPhone be 14B, whatever
Yeah.
price it is? It's just because they've decided, and you will agree with that. But why do you need to bargain with the artist that, you've just done this and it's just a small size? Why should it be a per square foot rate? There should be a rate for the content that appeals to you and beyond just that. So I think it's a very large question where, the public debate has to happen, but the conversation is not there. And the artists, art galleries, I mean, when I say art galleries, I just mean the commercial setups of it, of handling. So, I mean, they can be the auction houses, everybody. And the public. Why are we not on a common platform anywhere? Why is there such a lot of gap? That gap should go away. No?
Yeah.
What is the purpose of art? That's again a big question. What does art do? When I engage with art, what do I get? Do I cry?
Pleasure.
Do I laugh? What it gives me emotions.
New perspective, yeah.
It gives me emotions.
Right,
There is
yeah.
an emotional connect. It can be anger also. I want to tear it down. It's so bad. Or, whatever is depicted, I don't agree with it. I need to tear it down.
Yeah.
But there has to be reaction to it. At least have a conversation. People just don't want to converse with that. So I think in this large perspective, every stakeholder is to be blamed. Artists are to be blamed because they are not taking the necessary steps to really reach out to the public. I think the intermediaries need to do much more than what they're doing. Probably they're doing a lot for the artists. I'm not judging them. But are they really getting the crowds in? Are they making it easy to access? Or they're making it a niche, for that niche audience? Because then there's more appreciation in money. But that's not the only thing. The larger thing should be for the general public to just come as a regular thing that, I go there.
Yeah.
Delhi culture is very sad that way. I mean, I see more people in Mumbai going to museums, to galleries, Kala Ghoda, everywhere. They just go. And it's good to see that.
Yeah.
Are we doing enough public engagement exercises to actually do that?
I think this will definitely help. Like, I can see your sort of passion that sort of seeps through. I think, and that's something I sort of tell my friends as well, that because people say, "Ki, let's go watch a movie or let's go to a cafe. Like, we can go to an exhibition and like look at art, works of art." So I think, I think it's
You
going to
can
be
just go via.
Yeah, go via, exactly. Yeah.
Just go to the gallery.
Or go to Museo Camera. Like, they have a cafe next
Excellent
door.
thing. Yeah. So that's another thing. A very basic thing at all galleries.
Yeah.
There should be a possibility to sit down, converse, have something to eat. Because if that's not there, it becomes very difficult.
For sure.
Don't let it be cut and dry. I mean, the festival that I used to do, it was 25-day festival, 40 events, all kinds of different things. So exhibition happening on the walls. And while that exhibition is happening, I keep changing what are the events happening in the middle. You'll have stand-up comedy. You'll have a workshop of, book cover making, Urdu script writing, whatever, that comes. So try and get people who would not necessarily go to a gallery and get them to come for something else. So there's a workshop for children and the parents come to drop. And while the child is, engaged in that workshop, they just walk around. I'm not asking you to buy. I'm just saying find time to at least just engage with what is there.
Yeah.
So we can always do this. Why don't more restaurants and everything have it as a regular exercise? It should be standard for everyone and not brilliant, these spaces.
Yeah.
I myself am trying to create a space for the last 10, 12 years. But now I think it's going to happen maybe early next year at least. So I want to have that. Yeah, so I want to have that space where I want to invite people for different reasons and give them an opportunity to engage with more than one form of art. And for artists as well. Because one artist, like we were talking about this specialization.
Yeah.
I am an artist who is engaged in visual art. I don't want to engage with somebody who's, doing something else. Why not? At least that's also an art form. And you are a human being. So you should consume what's happening, right? I mean, you shouldn't just shirk away from that. So getting just the artists also to engage with different forms of art. I think that's what my mission in life is.
I think that's a great way to sort of leave this conversation and this
Yeah.
conversation. Akshat, I've had a fantastic time. I've really enjoyed myself. I think I've only scratched the surface. There's so much else that we could have talked about. But hopefully sometime again in the future.
Sure.
It was a great time having you on. Is there any last words you'd like to leave the audience with? Where they can find your work, where they can find your social media handles?
So, I mean,
Artamore as well, if you'd like to give that a shout out.
Artamore.in is the www.artamore.in is the art blog that we run. So you can find artist interviews, reviews, and articles on art. Then Delhi Street Art, you can just Instagram us, and Facebook, Twitter, we are everywhere. And you can just check out the walls. You can check on Google as well. So a lot of places that we worked at, we put the tag. So if you put check for Street Art Nukkad, that will take you to the Hoska's place that we have done. Delhi Street Art is done. Then what else? I think I have not done for the last 2 years because of the COVID situation. I tried to convert it to a website, but I want a physical engagement. So hopefully that will happen next year. So I'll have more to share. But you can check for Identity Art Marathon is the name that it was. And Aakshat Sinha, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. And I'm there on Twitter, but I have kind of shut it off for myself. It's just too much.
Much healthier.
There's just too much toxicity happening there. So I'm fine without that. Yeah, you can find, and I'm searchable on Google. Yeah, and my numbers and everything are there. I mean, you can just drop me a message. I generally respond.
Right.
As long as it does not, I don't respond well to trolling. I'll get back to you on that. But otherwise, I'm open to conversations, and I really want to work with people who want to do something. I want to have these conversations. I was really thrilled to have this conversation with you. And I know I've been speaking too much.
No. This is your space, man.
No, I wanted to also kind of read from your reactions, and probably the viewers will have something to say about this. I want to know what people think when I say certain things. Because these are the things that I have kind of, filtered for myself, crystallized for myself, that this works for me. I just want to know, does it resonate with others?
I think that's all. That's everything that anyone is trying to do, right? Trying to fit in.
No, fitting. It's not. No. I'm fine where I am. I'm not fitting in. I just want to know: is it something that happens with others as well? My idea of art, engagement, the specialization, identity, every single thing. I just want to know if it resonates with others. I'm ready to change my opinions also. Why not? Yeah. As long as there is a reason why it should be done. I'm not stuck to things.
Great. There's so much to think about and so much to ponder. This was great. Thank you so much for coming down. And see you guys in the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.